It started, as these things often do, with the full glamour of Stansted Airport. And before he'd even left the plane, a row was brewing, as they often do, over the tone of his tweets. He'd called London's mayor a stone-cold loser, a response to Sadiq Khan's own earlier message of welcome. And while he was at it, he fired off a broadside at the New York mayor, Bill DeBlasio. DeBlasio, it seems, was delighted. As the president flew in, a welcome message imprinted on the lawn. So far then, so normal. He was swept from the dizzy heights of Stansted to central London by helicopter. A further ride took him to Buckingham Palace, a reminder that this populist president cannot actually face the people of Britain, arguably America's closest ally. With the Queen, he got the full state visit treatment, and they talked tartan. In the Abbey, he was reminded of our shared past, united against a common enemy in war. But the real politics of this trip begins tomorrow. Final preparations being put in place for the coming days, official and unofficial. He will not have the chance to address Parliament, that privilege denied him by the Speaker John Bercow. And there'll be no one-on-one with Theresa May. Instead, a host of others will be present when they speak. It's unclear who took that decision, but it will probably hold little regret for either. It was a relationship that never appeared an easy one. It's the coming days that will show us most clearly where our politicians and leadership contenders position themselves in response to this most extraordinary of democratically elected leaders. Privately, many admit to respecting him little. Publicly, they will say what they can to get him on side.
I'd be thanking him for all that the United States does to help Britain.
Sajid Javid, thanks very much.
Except the leader of the opposition, who continued the war of words on Twitter and confirmed he'd be speaking at tomorrow's protests. As countless previous visits have shown, our relationship with America is vital. Trade deals and security, intelligence sharing and global alliances.
I can't expect you to be honest.
But how much should we believe what the president actually promises? His words, as we know, are light, his ambitions often unachieved. Is it demeaning to believe him when he promises Britain the world, as long as we follow his plan of attack? Or would it be even crazier to ignore him? We'll be speaking to the New York Mayor, Bill DeBlasio, in just a moment. First, though, we're joined in the studio by the Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood, a former key aide to Margaret Thatcher, Lord Falconer, former Lord Chancellor under Tony Blair, and from Washington, D.C., by Liz Harrington, national spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee. Let me start with you, Liz Harrington. Do you really believe, then, that a trade deal is on the cards, a quick trade deal between the US and the UK, if, as President Trump says, it cuts its ties with Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the goal, has always been to have a strong trade partnership once the UK does follow through on its Brexit vote, which the British people voted for back into 2016. And so, of course, that's the goal, but I think we're going to have to wait until the successor of Theresa May gets in power.
Do you accept, Lord Falconer, that it is crazy to ignore somebody so powerful who can deliver so much?
It's crazy to ignore the United States of America. They are one of our closest allies, but you have to stand up to the political contempt with which President Trump treats our politicians. He's been rude about our Prime Minister, he's been rude about the Mayor of London, he's been rude about the way that we've done Brexit, and we're just supposed to treat this person who breaks all the diplomatic norms as if he should be treated in the way that somebody would be treated under normal circumstances. No, that is not the way to treat a friend. A friend should be told he can't behave like that.
Does rudeness matter?
Well, it's not great, but it's a characteristic of this president. I think we're right to honour the office of the President of the United States of America. There is much we have in common. The alliance is very important. The shared interest in defence and intelligence is crucial to both countries. And we have a very strong trading relationship already, despite EU tariffs being imposed on the United States under World Trade Organization rules. But I think it would be possible to improve on that with a World Trade deal, with a joint deal under World Trade rules that went further, and that would be in our mutual interest.
I'm going to ask you to hold those thoughts for a moment. We're going to cross to Albany, New York State now and speak to Mayor Bill DeBlasio. I wonder if you were surprised, sir, at the tone of the President's tweet this morning before he'd even left the tarmac.
Even for Donald Trump, this was extreme. To attack a major leader of an allied country, there's no question in my mind this was beyond the pale in so many ways. It's not, you know, we've seen so many things from President Trump, but this one is just not normal. It's not acceptable. And Sadiq Khan, to me, is an exemplary leader. And he raised a very powerful concern, which obviously sparked Trump's ire when he said that, you know, Donald Trump is part of this growing intolerant right-wing movement around the country, around the world, I'm sorry, that is harming democracy. It's harming the realities of a tolerant society. And then to have the President of the United States attack him in a way that I don't doubt for a moment was not only personal, but was also very much directed at him as a Muslim. No, this deserves an apology. Donald Trump should apologize to Sadiq Khan because this goes far beyond the pale, even for Donald Trump.
It didn't actually talk about him being a Muslim. It talked about an ungracious welcome. I mean, that was at the heart of it, wasn't it? That he felt he should be received graciously by this country and by London's mayor.
I'm arguing to you that the message was thinly veiled at best, that it was, in fact, because Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. Donald Trump has made a career of attacking people based on race and religion and ethnicity. This is very much in a pattern we've seen for a long time. And he uses it to, you know, gin up his political base, and he uses it to distract from his mistakes in foreign policy, his mistakes with his trade policy. And so I don't think it was for a moment about the graciousness or lack of graciousness of the welcome. I think it was a political strategy. But it's a different set of rules. If he's attacking, you know, if he attacks me as the mayor of New York City, that's one thing. But to attack the mayor of the largest city in one of our crucial allied nations,
OK.
That undermines the relationship.
Let me ask you, because you'll know, Mayor, that there are 13 or so Conservative candidates lining up to be the next Prime Minister. What would be your message to those leadership hopefuls seeking your President's endorsement? Are they right to look for his approval?
Oh, I think it's a mistake. I'll tell you, first of all, thinking about the great traditions that our countries share in terms of democracy, and vibrant debate and respect for all people and all backgrounds. Donald Trump has in so many ways been a divisive figure. He's not consistent with that democratic tradition. But on top of that, it is a very negative trend when an American president intervenes in the elections of another country. Look, he was obviously quite comfortable with Russia attempting to intervene on his behalf in the American election. He's now trying to do the same in other countries. This is a bad pattern for democracy. It is not the place of a foreign leader to attempt to undermine the democratic will of any people. So I would say to the Conservatives, stay away from him.
You'd say stay away. And when he's offering a trade deal and he's saying he endorses Boris Johnson, he wants Farage to go to the EU to do battle, isn't he right to try and help us through this?
From my point of view, it's one thing if you say, should we work cooperatively on a trade deal? Of course we should. We have a tremendous alliance and history. But when it's him attempting to interfere with the political process of another country, endorsing a candidate for leadership in another country is not the place of an American president. I think that only engenders ill will amongst the people of any country that hears that kind of message. And it's not his place in particular to violate the norms of the relationship. Look, this is someone who is trying to foster division. And I don't think that's healthy for Western democracies. I think Sadiq Khan was right to say there's something dangerous happening here, and we should not tolerate it.
Bill DeBlasio, thanks very much indeed. Let me throw that back to you, John Redwood. First of all, endangering ill will, and there's something dangerous about the game he's playing now. And indeed, about the game that your colleagues, many Conservative PM hopefuls, are playing in trying to woo him.
Well, we know that the Mayor of New York would like to be the Democrat candidate and is trying to score points off the President because he wishes to oppose him in the forthcoming presidential election. But he was wrong to ignore your very fair point that the bad exchanges began with our mayor in London being very disobliging about the President and about his visit. And the President responded. And we all know that Donald Trump is a master of the tweet, and he does undiplomatic tweets, and that is part of his style.
This is less about Donald Trump.
But we are interested in the visit of the most powerful man in the Western world, the leader of the Western world. And of course, there will be times when the United Kingdom has tough messages to give to our leading ally and friend.
But not
there
now.
will be many times when there are lots of good messages, and now is a time for a good message because we are commemorating a great collaboration.
Look at the position
75
of your
years ago.
Conservative colleagues. Jeremy Hunt can't decide whether he's coming or going, whether to sort of embrace him or leave him. Sajid Javid was saying he ignores all the Muslim ban. You know, he said this yesterday, and he just wants to thank him. You've got people who are positively sycophantic in his presence. He's not going to deliver a trade deal to people he thinks are sycophants.
Well, he will deliver a trade deal that makes sense to the United States of America, and any British Prime Minister has to stand up for British interests in a way which we lamentably didn't in our negotiations with the European Union.
No. I mean, the President is playing, as Bill DeBlasio said, a wholly inappropriate and dangerous game. Any sensible British politician, whether a Conservative or a Labour, will say, we will choose the next Prime Minister. We will not.
Isn't it the opposite of patriotic? If all this was to gain sort of British patriotism back, isn't it completely the opposite?
Well, each individual candidate for the leadership will make up their own mind about their attitudes towards the United States of America. I guess one candidate was well known to the President likes him, and then the other candidates got jealous. But that won't be determining.
That's pathetic, isn't it? That's
that won't be determining
party.
how I vote for them. I will want to know.
Prime Minister?
No, of course I don't want a craven Prime Minister, and I will be, with other colleagues, choosing in due course from this galaxy of talent which is suddenly come forward.
And will you ensure that you don't vote for the most
But I will not
craven?
be judging them on what they've said about President
Who
Trump
will you
primarily.
be
I will be
backing
judging them on how do they get us out of the European Union as quickly as possible without the withdrawal agreement, which has been decisively rejected by the British voters, and then go on to be a good independent democracy, allying with the United States of America and many other countries where it is in our mutual interest. But our Prime Minister has to stand up for our interests.
Let me bring in Liz Harrington. I wonder whether you're completely bemused by the conversation that you're hearing this side, Liz Harrington. You've got a president who can't even drive up the Mall to Buckingham Palace without protests, has to take helicopters everywhere because he's not liked at all here. And we're trying to work out whether he's even serious in the words he uses to talk about trade.
What I would say is rude and inappropriate and divisive is when the President of the United States is on his way to join with our great ally, United Kingdom, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of defeating fascism and defeating Nazism and saving the world order for freedom and democracy, to be accused and smeared by the mayor of London of being a fascist with no evidence. So that is what is rude and divisive. And what you haven't shown in your coverage tonight is the president's really strong message and solidarity with the Queen of England, with expressing our shared values of sovereignty and freedom and liberty. And there is such a warm, strong relationship that is going to be even stronger going forward.
Why then did he begin this whole trip in the Oval Office by talking about the right candidates to be Prime Minister of a country that he does not belong to?
He didn't endorse anyone. He said, I like Boris Johnson, but if he gets it, that would be great. But you know who did interject into your politics was none other than Barack Obama, who threatened you and said you would be at the back of the queue.
He's just done exactly the same thing. He's literally done the same thing.
No, he is not.
Completely different.
Britain has already voted democratically, I would add, to leave the European Union. He is saying he supports Great Britain, the people of Great Britain.
Les, I'm just going to bring in Lord Falconer.
He's
Mr.
expressed a view about Boris Johnson. He said Farage should be involved in the negotiations, and when he landed on the tarmac, the first thing he spoke to the British Foreign Secretary about was Sadiq Khan. Why is he involving himself to such an extent in the politics of another country?
Why is the mayor smearing the president of the United States as a
he's the president of the United States of America. Why is he saying these things about our politics? Why is he not, like almost every other president of the United States of America, stepped back from UK politics? And you should understand that Barack Obama said if we left the European Union, we'd be at the back of the queue for a deal. That's a completely different thing.
But it was a deliberate and malicious intervention.
Favouring a particular
we want a good deal
politician.
Once you follow through on Brexit, which is what your people
and it helped the Leave campaign, I'm pleased to say.
So if you don't like Obama, you think it's pretty outrageous, and if you don't like Trump, you think that's pretty outrageous.
That was a referendum campaign when the British public were going to make a very important decision.
So you're criticising President Obama for that. Why are you not
that
criticising...
Could
I finish the point? Why are you not criticising President Trump for making suggestions, first of all, about how Mrs May should conduct the negotiations? He was critical of her. And secondly, suggesting Farage.
I want to move this on to the position that the opposition have taken. Jeremy Corbyn, we know, will be speaking. He didn't attend the banquet tonight. He'll be speaking in protest at the rally tomorrow. Is that the role for the leader of the opposition?
Well, normally not, most certainly not. But once the President of the United States engages to such an extent in UK politics, then it's very difficult both for Sir Vince Cable and the leader of the opposition.
He's not responding to Trump's Brexit plan, I don't think,
He's
tomorrow,
certainly not responding to his Brexit plan.
So should he be protesting? Should he be on the stump protesting?
I think that the way that President Trump has conducted himself towards British politics, which includes breaking with the norm that you don't get involved in UK politics, made it very difficult both for Sir Vince Cable and for Jeremy Corbyn to go to the dinner, because it's very difficult to disassociate the President of the United States from President Trump.
He could be in power in 6 months' time, and then what happens?
And he's made it clear that he will engage with President Trump, and he's made it clear that he will speak to President Trump, and he has made it clear he will raise his issues direct with him, but not the honour of a state visit.
But the leader of the opposition should be at a banquet like that, and if he has a disagreement with the president, the courteous thing to do is to go to the banquet and tell the president privately but firmly why he disagrees with him. I think it's a cop-out what Jeremy is doing, and I think he's letting the country down by what he's doing.
We've run out of time.
Sorry.
Thank you all very much. That was very polite.